So a couple of days ago, we were talking a little bit about the Chinese megaport that just opened in Shanxi, Peru. And I believe it was the 16th of November when the port actually had its opening ceremony, and Xi Jinping himself was in attendance. And this really does spell the a new era of Latin American Chinese relations, or the Latin American and North American relations, because we're going to see now a bifurcation in Latin America from country to country. Who is going to side more so with China, with Russia, with BRICS? Who is going to be siding more so with the United States and the Western establishment? So there are a lot of pieces being moved around the grand chessboard at the moment, and this megaport is mega news, and it's going to be a big important milestone in the development of relations with other countries in the region. And Trump has said that he plans to put a tariff of 60% on goods coming through that megaport. So not only Chinese goods, but goods being resold out of Latin American countries which were attained through the use of the megaport are going to be hit with big tariffs. And in the past, the US, they a long time ago did not have income tax, and the country made all its money from trade tariffs. And Trump was talking about the idea of possibly doing away with income tax in the future and going back to a model where the country generates most of its GDP from tariffs. So there's going to be a lot of money generated from tariffs in trade between North America and South America if Trump is actually going to follow through with a 60% tariff on goods from Latin American countries who do make use of the Chinese megaport. So related to the megaport as well, it is planned that a number of railway networks are going to be built from Brazil to Peru to move goods from Brazil through Latin America to Peru to the port to export and import things to and from Brazil, from China, from Asia. So that's going to be huge as far as the development of Latin America. And I think there are going to be a lot of interesting projects that come under development as a result of that. So we're just going to take a look at a few more details related to the Chinese megaport in Peru. And we have an article here from visiontimes.com. There were a number of articles that I could have read on this subject, but this seemed to give a general overview of the capacity of the port, and that's the main thing I wanted to talk about, just the implications of this port's use, how it will affect trade in the region, and the implications generally that will stem from its operation. So here is a picture of the port. View of traditional fishing boats anchored in the town's harbour with the Shanxi megaport cranes in the background, 78 kilometers north of the Peruvian capital Lima on October 29th, 2024. The port was inaugurated on the 14th of November 2024 by Peruvian President Dina Boluarte and her Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping on the sidelines of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in Lima. Newly built Chinese-owned 15-berth megaport in Peru was opened on November 4th. Chinese and Peruvian authorities celebrated the occasion while locals protested the coercive methods with which the project had been completed, and U.S. officials voiced concern about Beijing's reach in Latin America. So I'm not sure if that is due to China using Chinese labor to construct the port and jobs in the construction of the port not being made available to native Peruvians, or what the problem there was, if the project was carried on in secrecy without a vote or agreement of the native population. I'm not really sure what the issue there is. It hasn't been specified so far, but apparently some locals aren't so happy with the construction and subsequent opening of the megaport in Chansey, Peru. So let's see. Located in the city of Chansey, about 48 miles from the Peruvian capital Lima, the port was lauded by Chinese leader Xi Jinping as a boost for Peru-China ties, as it will cut logistics by 20% and bring shipping times down to 23 days. The Chansey port is expected to earn 4.5 billion worth in annual revenue and directly employ more than 8,000 people, Xi added. It is owned by COSCO Shipping Ports, a Chinese state-owned enterprise. I'd be curious to know what amount of the 8,000 people that will be employed at the port will be Chinese nationals, and what portion of them will be Peruvian, and what proportion of them might be from other countries, because obviously if it's such a boon for the local economy, it should create a lot of jobs for Peruvians, right? But China controlling this massive resource, they're probably going to want mostly Chinese people running the show there. So maybe that's why the concerns from the local Peruvians who are not happy about the opening of the port. Xi was in Peru for a state visit and the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation APEC summit, where he spoke with U.S. President Joe Biden, U.S. puppet Joe Biden, the puppet-in-chief himself. However, Xi's planned in-person attendance of the Chansey port's opening ceremony, along with that of the Peruvian President Dina Boluarte, had to be moved online due to protests that were expected to take place. No way, I hadn't heard about that. The liberal use of explosives to build the port disrupted local life in the city of Chansey, which had traditionally been a fishing community. Homes were damaged by the construction, and marine life in the area has been disturbed, impacting the ability of residents to continue their fishing business. Such side effects were covered up by Chinese construction teams through intimidation, and collusion with officials, according to Taiwan's National Security Bureau. Now, I don't know, I haven't substantiated these reports independently yet, and if it's coming out of Taiwan, it's understandable. There's a lot of animosity between Taiwan and China, so maybe we want to take this with a grain of salt. I'll look into this, though, and I'll report back on it later, the validity of the claims of it harming the local ecology and the ability of local fishermen to do their traditional job fishing in that bay. Let's see. Angry locals had planned to take their grievances directly to Boluarte and Xi when they arrived, as reported by the Epoch Times. So instead, they avoided a ceremony at the actual port itself and did all of the formal stuff in relation to opening the port over the internet, apparently. That just seems very strange. Angry locals had planned to take their grievances directly to them when they arrived. Yes, Brian Nichols, the top US diplomat for Latin America, said at a press conference on November 14th that it's essential for the countries across the hemisphere to ensure that the People's Republic of China economic activities respect local laws as well as safeguard human rights and environmental protections. Well, that would be atypical if we're considering China and how well they generally respect human rights or local laws in regions that they develop. It's similar enough in Africa as well. They install all this infrastructure. The local government gets massively indebted to China, and then China basically acquires the ability to use the infrastructure and use natural resources in a given region because basically the country who called for the creation of certain infrastructure based on loans granted by China. They can't pay back the loans, so China gets more and more liberties to use the resources themselves, and the government has to negotiate with China as a result of being massively indebted to them, and China benefits essentially through economic espionage. So, a July report by Leyland Lazarus, serving as Director of National Security for Florida International University, Jack D. Gordon Institute of Public Policy, called out the potential for Chansey Port to help Beijing undermine American economic interest in Latin America and even spy on U.S. naval activities. And that is true, but at the same time, who do you want to side with? Do you want to side with the US, or do you want to side with China, Russia, and BRICS? I'm kind of curious as well, for any Latin Americans that might watch this. Who would you prefer to have more influence in your region? Would you prefer a BRICS coalition, or even Russia and China individually having a stronger influence on your nation or the region of Latin America generally? Or would you be happier being friends with North America and Western powers generally and having them have a predominant influence on the region, if you had to pick one or the other? So this is just a short article here anyway, a little more about the building of the Megaport in Peru at the behest of China. This is big news. There are a lot of implications going forward for the region as a result of this, and it's going to be instrumental of the development of regional Latin American politics and who is going to be siding with whom on the greater international stage. So yeah, that's just a quick update on the Chinese Megaport, and that's a little bit of news from No Soy Gringo. I'll be back with you again real soon. Goodbye.